You guys need to stop gaslighting yourselves and other people into believing Sega is entirely to blame. There's no reason that Tails had to be completely by himself in Central City. My disagreements with Ian actually come directly from his writing ability and his interpretations of some of these characters. And then they just have Cream consoling Whisper as if she's the only one that could understand. Cream is a baby, bro! But IDW delivers no final message to this idea. Everybody around her in that instance was just as much of an absolute moron for allowing this idea to go through. Yet Super Silver is able to just apparently rip the virus from a person's very DNA strand. Here's how IDW slyly uses specific characters to make certain scenarios happen. Even if we just give full responsibility to the restoration side, it still makes no sense. So no matter how we split it, with the rewrite and Ian's original idea, neither scenario would have matched Shadow's character. Sonic's philosophy in this comic is purely and uniquely his own. Most of his friends do not map onto the words that Sonic is saying. Me personally, I would never agree to join this busted organization. I'm more likely to die following Amy and Jules' poorly thought out decisions than I would be just trying to survive out on my own.
You're tuning in to the Eggman Empire. Authorization approved. Access granted.
What is happening, you damn degenerates? My name is KotyTang. Welcome everybody to the Metal Virus Saga review. IDW and the Sonic community are pretty impressive, aren't they? If this were any other franchise, I doubt that a regular person reading this comic would have continued after the Metal Virus Saga, much less the Neo Metal Saga. This comic has been pretty offensive to anybody who even has an ounce of care about writing. But there is hope. A new writer is temporarily taking over for the IDW series, and thus it's been given a third chance to impress me. And as they say, third time is the charm. Since we're switching writers, later on in this review, I'll talk about how Ian Flynn's writing has been. So you're gonna get a bit of tough love and some real love from me, buddy. If it's your first time on my channel, this is a review of the entire saga as a whole. This video will assume that you fully experienced the story. So if I don't mention something here, or go as in-depth as you want me to on something, it's very likely that I've already covered it during the specific issue you're wanting. I won't be able to say every single thing I want to say about this comic, so in order to get the full experience of this review, I ask you to please take the journey with me and many others as we experience my first time going through the entirety of the IDW series together. And even if you've already read the full series, I think you'll be getting a perspective that you've never heard before from me. My channel almost exclusively focuses on the writing of things. If you've never really thought about writing, then most of what I'm going to say is something that you've probably never even considered before. We're gonna start light. Let's break down the pacing of the Metal Virus Saga. I can only imagine how the story felt for people who had to wait month to month for each issue to drop. But pacing isn't about the release schedule of something. Although release dates do play a role in audience perception of time, pacing is how well the entire story flows and how each event is told. That's what pacing actually is, so that's what we're going to talk about. The saga begins excellently with issue 13. This chapter has it all. Even the fight against Rough and Tumble tells a story. There's a mystery we're trying to discover, and the two Skunk brothers? Well, they're our only leads. Of course, that's in the perspective of Sonic, as we already know that Eggman is back at this point. But we need to get our heroes up to speed. Issue 13 sets up a huge chunk of the plot. It establishes what every character is doing, neatly incorporating what we set up in the Neo Metal Saga, such as continuing Rough and Tumble's grudge against Sonic, and displaying the current state of the Resistance, or the Restoration, as it's now called. This issue even shows off every villain we'll encounter, the major threat the heroes are going to have to deal with, and a glimpse at the Warp Topaz's abilities. And then we keep the story progressing with issue 14. That is a massive improvement from the Neo Metal Saga. The way IDW handles the ideas in these issues is very interesting as well. As we go on, you're going to see IDW present an idea in one issue, and then in the next, they're going to flip that and explore some questions that spawn from that idea. So issue 14 jumps right to the point. In the last issue, Sonic was told that Eggman might be back, and we're teased with the Warp Topaz's portal. Here's the flip. Take note that these are immediate, not several issues later. Sonic is finally introduced directly to Dr. Starline. We waste no time in giving Sonic the answer to his question. Eggman has indeed returned. The tease for the Warp Topaz is rewarded, and we see how Dr. Starline fights with it. This is such a snappy writing style. IDW presents the premise of the issue we're on, and we do explore that, but throughout the issue we're simultaneously teased on what the next issue is going to be about, so we're constantly foreshadowing and rewarding over and over. This keeps the writers constantly thinking ahead. They can't just write a bunch of things down and have them pay off later. Each decision has to link into a plot point immediately. This style of writing is great for when you want to speed through a story. You don't waste too much time getting overly detailed. You just keep rewarding the audience by constantly flipping over the cards that are pulling your story. With the fight in issue 14 done, we've now caught our heroes up to speed on what exactly is going on. However, they still don't know about one last threat. So issue 15 comes in to finish up the setup, and the saga officially begins with the final defeat of Rough and Tumble. We're teased on the reveal of Eggman's spaceship that will be delivering the metal virus. We're shown how efficient the virus is when an actual character gets it on them, and Sonic is the first of the heroes to be infected by the virus. Excellently done, IDW. They perfectly fit right into that 3-chapter sweet spot to set up every major thing you need to begin your story. In these 3 issues, we've had this quick succession to advance the plot while providing character moments and a believable sense of progression. We even set up our protagonist with a desperately worrying disease in the same issue that we've directly been shown just what happens to a person when it takes them over. By giving the virus to the primary character, it automatically rings these alarm bells to the reader about how the hero is going to break this brand new curse. Issue 16 gives us some relief with a temporary remedy for Sonic. However, Sonic is not who we're supposed to be concerned for. This issue reveals the true purpose to Eggman's spaceship, and we're given a front row seat as we're forced to witness the sheer devastation that this virus can cause. That's how you do a payoff. We're given everything we need to know to understand the severity of what's about to happen, and then we drop this bombshell moment to really kick off the saga. Not only is the virus damaging on an individual level, but it also spreads throughout wildlife. Eggman has the ability to drop a tsunami on top of anything that threatens to stop him, and there's so much more of this virus being created on the ship, allowing Eggman to continue flying around the region to infect the world even more. So now, not only have we established that this virus is a powerful tool in Eggman's arsenal, one that he can use against the heroes directly, we've also shown that this virus will continue acting and spreading regardless of who's keeping tabs on it. So this creates urgency for every single hero. It's no longer a matter of where Eggman is, it's now a matter of how long you can hide before this virus inevitably reaches your doorstep. In the case of the Chaotix, that is a literal statement, as the front door to their agency is broken into by an oncoming Zombot horde. While Sonic is able to arrive and help them evacuate who they can from the city, we lose Charmy in the process. So now we've established the safety of the heroes in this issue. While IDW has created their temporary fix for Sonic in the last issue, for issue 17, we flip that. Charmy is taken by the virus. So IDW shows us that while Sonic may be safe, that outcome does not tack on to everybody else. Yet another good flip, immediately tackling what the reader would naturally think of with Sonic being the only one infected and able to slow it. So right after we establish that Sonic is gonna be okay, Charmy is taken from us, essentially being the guinea pig to answer the audience in a way that doesn't hold your hand. We naturally come to the conclusion ourselves that Charmy does not have the speed trait that Sonic has against the virus. There's a reason that Charmy goes out in this issue, but you wouldn't think about it like I just explained if you were just reading. While writing, you always want that illusion of believability. The truth is that the majority of things in a story are inherently contrived. but the goal of writing is to write these contrived ideas so that it feels believable to the audience. When the audience can feel the contrivance, you've failed the scene. So now IDW has established that nobody is safe if they aren't Sonic. So we jump to the next question. We know that organic characters are at extreme risk, but what about robots on the hero side? Issue 18, Gemerald. There's that flip. It just hits you again and again. I think you get it by now. These issues appear to be set up as though they're designed to immediately answer a question you're naturally going to ask about what was shown and told to you, but they don't sacrifice the story. They're setting up so much in the background as well that's going to be important later, such as Dr. Starline and Eggman's deteriorating relationship. From the very first issue of the saga, Starline has been questioning Eggman, and repeatedly acting in a way that Eggman doesn't find to his liking, from almost privately taking out Sonic to constantly questioning Eggman's methods. In issue 18, Starline's first outburst at how Eggman deals with his ideas is finally brought into the story, with Eggman not even considering the idea that the Metavirus may mutate to the point that he can no longer control the Zombots. Now back to our flip, we fully set up that Gemerald and the other robots will be fine and are the best defense against the Zombots. We also set up that Eggman is losing control of the Zombots. So now we're going to start to tread into some previous setup here. We know that Sonic can just run off the virus, and we also know that there's only one character that can match his speed with Sonic, Shadow the Hedgehog. What issue 19 establishes is that not only has the virus gone completely rampant to the point that almost nowhere on the ground is safe, we are also directly shown that Sonic is still not invincible, and in fact his infection is getting worse with each time he touches the Zombots, but he can still run to shave it off right now. Through Shadow, we're shown that Sonic's speed can only protect him so much as Shadow is overtaken by the Zombots, and we're essentially warned along with Sonic that he can't get too careless or he'll end up just like everybody else, another mindless zombie in the crowd. And that's one of the major points of taking out Shadow in this arc. A warning shot to Sonic that would psychologically hit him hard as he sees the reflection of himself get taken out like he was just another citizen. Thematically, it works. At this point, multiple cities have fallen to the virus, and we've lost multiple characters. Even Omega is put out of commission in issue 20, thanks to the Zombot Shadow. With both Shadow and Omega gone, some of the most powerful characters have been removed from the roster of our heroes. This issue also gives us the first close call for Sonic, as he has to be saved by Silver and Tails. Against several Zombots, Sonic is fine. Against the Horde, not even he can come out unscathed. The pacing up to this point has been stellar. Every action has meaning, every word spoken is important, and every scene leads to another regardless of the issue we're on. Something that's going to happen in these next 3 issues is where the pacing starts to completely fall apart, and the scenario flipping that this saga began with is almost completely replaced in favor of a different writing style, one that I like to call the autocomplete. Issue 21 is 1/3 of a mini-story, as issues 22 and 23 both take place at the same time that issue 21 does. Splitting these issues into their own individual stories was, of course, a necessary idea. They all have multiple layers that IDW needed to be able to freely explore, and the decision to separate them this way absolutely pays off for the story. Issue 21 has Tails finding a cure for the virus, however it ends up lost thanks to his lab being overrun by Zombots. While this is happening, the Restoration has accidentally allowed an infected person into their main base, and essentially more than half of the organization is lost thanks to this, as well as Vanilla and Vector. Issue 23 has us following Sonic as he encounters Eggman, ending with the biometric scanner given to Sonic being broken, which Tails was using to create his cure to the virus, meaning the virus is completely without a cure now, and even if the biometric scanner wasn't broken, Tails' lab and Restoration HQ are gone. That leads us to the elephant in the room. As a side story, IDW used these 3 issues to fully introduce the Deadly Six without having to dedicate their inclusion to an entire issue. The story that we've established so far, the villains we've followed, the danger and severity of the virus we've seen, the grudges created, drama carefully crafted, established themes and ideas. All of that comes to a screeching, ear-busting halt as the Deadly Six officially make their entrance and proceed to obliterate everything the story has been setting up, as we now have to ignore what the story was about and change it into a story that features the Deadly Six front and center. Even the Zombots, the massively growing army of completely uncontrollable robots that had been quickly taking over every inch of the world without a cure in sight, now become a completely tamed and docile force as the Deadly Six manage to control them en masse. Eggman is no longer running the show. He's been dethroned as the villain of the saga, and now he's going to start working with the heroes to put an end to it. This is much different than a switch villain at the end of a story. There are still quite a few issues we have to go through in order to set up the Deadly Six's takeover. So it's no longer the Metal Virus saga. Once the Deadly Six start taking everything over, that's basically the end. The saga's over. The Metal Virus and the Big Bad have been tamed and defeated by the Deadly Six. The story has now transitioned into the Deadly Six saga, using the story we had been following as its backbone. So let's talk about the new saga, and you'll see just how the Deadly Six have completely derailed the story to the point that after they're gone, we still needed 3 additional issues to clean up the salvage of what they caused. Word of advice for any writer out there: do not ever bring on an entire league of villains at the end of your story and expect them to take over the show in any sort of satisfying way. You are going to stunt your story the majority of the time. None of the new villains you brought on will have any time to be fleshed out. Nobody will care about them, so they won't have any memorable moments, and you'll be flailing around trying to find out what to do with the original villain that you had been writing the story for so far. In IDW's case, they just make every villain the good guy. The alternative was to remove them from the story. So, in issue 24, we finish up the discussion that began way back in the Neo Metal Saga, thanks to Sonic and Espio's argument about Mr. Tinker. And then we lose Tangle as she was surprise attacked by Jewel, who had been turned into a Zombot already. We see the remainder of the Restoration head to Angel Island to discuss with Knuckles all that's happened so far. The Deadly Six arrive thanks to Dr. Starline, but they become out of control and steal the Chaos Emeralds. Eggman and Starline are forced to the hero side, but Starline doesn't want to cooperate and is stingy with his Warp Topaz, so now he's off the team and forced into a portal going elsewhere. And now the heroes have the Warp Topaz to themselves. They all divvy up who they've got left, call in the Babylon Rogues, defeat 5 of the Deadly Six, lose Cream and the Babylon Rogues to the virus, take back 5 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and then thanks to Rouge stealing the emerald from the face ship, they now have 6. Sonic and Silver take the final emerald from Zavok, allowing them to go super and defeat him. Sonic and Silver use the Warp Topaz to free the world of the virus. Sonic is missing, Zavok is locked up, the rest of the Deadly Six go into hiding, Eggman fixes Omega's body to attack the heroes, but Sonic regains his memory thanks to Blaze, he gets teleported in, defeats Eggman's giant mech, and Sonic lets Eggman run away, ending the Deadly Six saga. That's it. Everything just auto-completes. There was no creative way we tackled the virus. There was no interesting cure. Sonic was constantly overcome and then freed of the virus instantaneously. The fights with the Deadly Six ended in a matter of several pages each. We deleted the virus from existence, and everything went back to the way it was before the virus began spreading. So now we have the setup for the next saga. Ruff and Tumble are pardoned and get away. Eggman is pardoned and gets away. Zavok is locked up in Eggman's place. The rest of the Deadly Six are missing somewhere on Earth. Starline has been forced away from Eggman and is plotting in the background. The leadership of the Restoration is sent over to Jewel. The Chaotix are back to being detectives, and so on and so on. All of these things happened within the final 3 issues. We have some storylines that do wrap up. Not really in the most satisfying way, but Silver's future is saved and his reason for being here since the Neo Metal Saga is done. Amy finally gets to give up the Restoration, the Metal Virus is deleted from everybody, and Dr. Starline leaves Eggman. So why do I just seem to have this empty feeling? Well, let's see. We had to skip over how Vector found Charmy. Dr. Starline does not make the decision to leave Eggman himself. He's forced to do this, even though it was repeatedly foreshadowed foreshadowed that he wanted to. Eggman lost control of the metal virus and they temporarily found a frequency to regain control, and then he just gave up trying. Amy was completely failing the restoration in motivation, preparation, and leadership, so she just passes everything off to Jewel and it's all better now, maybe? Ruff and Tumble are saved and then they just leave. Espio and Sonic's disagreement about leaving Mr. Tinker alive is never resolved. The Deadly Six, Ruff and Tumble, and Eggman all got away for free except for Zavok. The heroes never found a cure to the metal virus. They instead had to use a Deus Ex Machina through Super Sonic and Super Silver. We don't know the scope of how far the virus actually spread. We don't know how Rouge got onto the face ship. We don't know how the virus actually works, since we're constantly given mixed interpretations and the details on how it responds to Sonic aren't even logically consistent, which I'll get to later. When it comes to the development of our new heroes Tangle and Whisper, Tangle was removed from the story, and Whisper devolved into an emotional wreck who could no longer do anything. Sonic magically regains his memories. We threw away our main villains in favor of 6 entirely new ones that have nothing to do with the plot, aside from the fact that they can control robots, and there are still just so many more problems that I can and have brought up along the way while going through this comic. Everything becomes a mess and feels like it didn't get its proper exploration once the Deadly Six were ready to appear. The Metal Virus Saga, pacing-wise, had a strong start and was definitely a story that you could just pick up and be happily ferried through every step of the way. The dialogue was meaningful and revealed enough to get you to the next step. Most of the pieces fell into place as were needed, and the story didn't completely halt to explain some irrelevant thing that wouldn't have any proper weight in the saga. All of that is true up until we got to issue 21 and we began bringing in the Deadly Six, at which case the entire saga wrapped up as quickly as it could, because again, you just can't bring on an entire league of villains at the final moments of your story. Absolutely terrible idea for IDW. I am genuinely shocked that this idea got through. But let's not get completely negative just yet. Let's keep going with the positives. This is a standout fight, not just because it's a fight with plenty of weight to the narrative, but also because it's a fight between 4 actual animal characters. Surprisingly, this is a rarity for the entire franchise of Sonic. Sure, you have Sonic Battle, Black Knight, Sonic the Fighters, and 06, but given how many games there are in this franchise, it's still not common to see these characters actually fighting with each other. You're more likely to see Sonic fighting a monster or some form of robot before you are an animal character. It's just always interesting to see, and the comic always gets free points from me when they do this. Featuring the new Doctor for the first time in combat, against not just Sonic, but Silver as well. Dr. Starline steals the show even from Metal Sonic, with his crafty use of the Warp Topaz and nonchalant attitude. Even when finally caught by Sonic, it's like he had it all mapped out, giving the two a self-destruct code rather than an access code. If Starline didn't consistently fail at his attempts to do anything afterward, even when it came to basic understanding, I'd probably really like Starline by now. Of course, the real Eggman's first time being in the comic is great, but we want to see what Eggman's bringing to the table. The fight between Ruff and Tumble was good. It had narrative weight, it had fun choreography, and it gave us our first real taste of how IDW will make these cartoony animal guys battle each other. But what Eggman does to Ruff and Tumble is just diabolical. Of course, we know what was in these backpacks, but Ruff and Tumble had no idea. For Eggman to abuse that blind trust they have while they simultaneously berate him serves as a bit of justice for Eggman in a perfectly fitting way and gives us a window into Eggman's feelings on other people for IDW. taking inspiration from various media from the classic Sonic universe, as well as the tired media trend of zombies that lasted for over a decade, IDW manages to create a unique take on the formula in the form of Zombots and the Metal Virus itself. The virus shines as one of the most devastating things that the Sonic franchise has ever tackled. Nobody with a pulse is safe from this thing. Even plants are something to be feared, as they will accidentally spread the virus far and wide by the act of existing. The Metal Virus in concept is a quite horrifying idea. While nobody would have been surprised to see Rough and Tumble fall to this virus, seeing the titular character himself be infected by a highly contagious and highly deadly disease immediately builds intrigue. Although Sonic wasn't put in as many dire situations as I think he should have been, and I didn't really feel like the virus hindered him as much as you'd imagine it would, at the least, the concept that Sonic is the first hero infected inspires this level of urgency while we read, and has us immediately questioning what Sonic will do to make it through this in the end. What an incredible way to finalize Eggman's true debut in this comic. This is one of my all-time favorite scenes from IDW so far. It's the very start of the end of the world in a variety of ways. With the sheer volume of this virus at Eggman's disposal whenever he pleases, it's no surprise that Silver's timeline was completely screwed over by this thing. Not only does it act as a cute little nod to a character, it also doubles as an in-universe world-building technique. While it certainly doesn't account for the majority of what the planet looks like, it gives us a semi-detailed look at where everything is. I liked opening up this comic to Cream's little drawings, especially with how she crosses out everybody that's dead. Childlike wonder truly is a gift. Although it's a natural conclusion to a world-ending event, IDW still could have made it so that HQ was the only place left that was safe and airtight. How they utilized Angel Island was much better, and it used the world's geography in an immersive way. HQ getting infected was such a chaotic moment where it wasn't clear who was about to get infected. I think it was a missed opportunity that IDW only had Vanilla get infected while inside the chaos, yet Amy was somehow perfectly fine jumping into this horde, where other characters have gone down quicker. But regardless, the scene itself was enjoyable to read. While we were so graciously presented with Super Metal Sonic and Burning Blaze, we haven't seen our main guy perform one of his greatest feats. So not only do we get that, but we get two for the price of one. Super Sonic and Super Silver. My constant wish for this franchise is that someday Sonic meets a similar character that he can duke it out with. But it doesn't seem like we'll ever get that, and every Super Hedgehog so far has become a good guy. Dr. Starline, although forcefully, has pulled away from Eggman. That inspires him to do his own thing and attempt to do what Eggman has been doing, but better. Only time will tell how that goes, but just the tease of another major villain working against the heroes is an allure that I can't resist. Let me preface this by saying that I am not entirely familiar with Ian Flynn's writing from the Archie days. This comic has been my first time truly experiencing his style, ideas, and his depth as a writer. I am only able to effectively judge how he's done so far in this comic. One day, I may finally look at what he was capable of in the Archie days. But this is just how he's done for IDW. Ian is one of the only American Sonic writers, if not the only American Sonic writer, that genuinely researches every aspect of the lore, games, characters, and such. His knowledge and appreciation is not confined to just a single era or one piece of it. Every game, show, and obscure Sonic media, you can bet that Ian almost certainly has knowledge about it. While he may have his own reservations for what the game's characters and stories should be, many that even I don't agree with, Ian himself has proven time and time again that when it comes to how much he knows, he's he's just as much as a super fan of this franchise as we all are. And in that, I greatly appreciate Ian Flynn's contributions to the franchise, and I could gladly say that he 100% deserves the job that he has as head writer for the Sonic comics, which are generally the people that oversee everything in the writing process. They don't necessarily write the stories themselves. Ian Flynn as a direct writer, though? I don't agree with that. His skill as a writer is not really that high, at least from what I've seen in the IDW series. Let me explain why. My disagreements with Ian actually come directly from his writing ability and his interpretations of some of these characters. I could talk about some of the questionable things he has said in his podcast, the Bumblecast, but honestly, I think I should just keep it to how he's actually written the stories and let his work speak for itself. I think that's a more fair assessment. Ian has a proclivity to do quite a few things when writing a story. His accurately criticized Family Guy level of references that are supposed to be played straight, like when he randomly adds in a song lyric, anytime he writes it the way he does, they just serve to waste space and are egregious and invasive edging moments that he gives to the fans. His info dumps that teeter on him outright implying everybody reading the comic is too dumb to understand what the characters are saying. His flagrant and often poorly thought out use of continuity, whether it's from his own comic or the games, his negligence when it comes to world building, his narrative decisions that hinder and halt the story, such as when he spent the entirety of the Neo Metal Saga introducing an unnecessary amount of characters right up until the final issue, and how he recklessly throws in characters without giving them any sort of purpose, such as introducing the Deadly Six as we neared the climax of the Metal Virus saga, or how he threw Rough, Tumble, Tangle, and Whisper into the story and proceeded to give all of them nothing to do. If you go back to my in-depth reviews of each issue, there's an even longer list of complaints and observations I've made while going through this saga. From what I've seen from Ian Flynn is that he's unfortunately not a very good writer in practice. What Ian excels at is when it comes to creating unique concepts and shopping for interesting ideas. In that regard, he's one of the top writers for the Sonic franchise. He's exceptionally good at creating believable characters for the Sonic universe. He appears to have no shortage of story ideas, and he also has a pretty good understanding for how all of these characters act, or he can create a fitting personality for those who don't properly have one. Those things are all evident in the fact that he's the head writer for Sega when it comes to these comics. After reading through these first two sagas, it's apparent that Ian's actual ability needs quite a bit of correction. It's not surprising to me that he has so many notes delivered to him by Sega asking him to change so many things after reading through what he perceives to be good ideas. Some notable flubs I've been over before just for some examples of Ian's writing. The way he introduced Tails, which completely undermined Sonic's own abilities and accidentally made Tails exceedingly faster than Sonic. Blaze randomly info dumping how she can not only turn into Burning Blaze, but also how she's able to jump through dimensions. Introducing Rough and Tumble long before they're even remotely necessary to the story, rather than just already making them a part of Dr. Starline's crew. Introducing Tangle, Jewel, and Whisper for no reason except for the sake of introducing them, rather than waiting until they could have any sort of story relevance. Unintentionally writing it so that Metal Sonic is who restored Eggman's memories, when Ian's intention was obviously to show that Dr. Starline was responsible for Mr. Tinker being converted back to Eggman. The constant contradictions with the way the Metal Virus works and pure confusion he's created from it throughout this saga. Or the way that he completely shoehorned a chunk of the song It Doesn't Matter during Sonic and Eggman's debate with each other, wasting an entire page's worth of story. Ian obviously isn't all flubs. As I said, Ian is that guy when it comes to interesting and unique concepts. The Tangle and Whisper miniseries. Whisper's backstory is one of the most unique things about her, going as far as to make a whole league of heroes specifically catered to her origin, and even granting Whisper her own villain through Mimic. Ian even managed to dive into completely uncharted territory of the world during the war in Sonic Forces. The way Ian seeks to incorporate characters that would otherwise get little screen time, if they would ever get screen time again in a game, such as the Babylon Rogues, Vanilla, and the Deadly Six. His ability to take previously established ideas and repurpose them to something completely new, like the concept of the Metal Virus. It's like IDW's throwback to Sad AM and the Archie comics, which both share their roots with the very first Sonic game. His capability to give characters like Omega, Gemeral, Vanilla, Metal Sonic, Blaze, and so many other characters that aren't fleshed out or seen as often, a whole personality of their own that pulls from their limited time on screen in comparison to everybody else. From these two sagas, I can clearly see that Ian Flynn's weakness is when it comes to the actual nitty-gritty of the writing process. However, he excels at brainstorming ideas that other writers can bounce off of and work toward fleshing out into an enjoyable story to read along to. I think that Ian would do a much better job at directing his team of writers, fact-checking, making suggestions, and directly working alongside them, rather than being the one that does the writing himself. Let's get into some heavier topics. I was going to go on a huge discussion about this, but I don't want to spend too much time on this for my video. I will happily discuss in the comments to anybody who requires further clarification after I'm done with this topic. When it comes to writing mandates and what you can do in a story, every single, and I do mean every single company ever has mandates like these. With that said, Shadow the Hedgehog's actions in this comic and the backlash that came from it is not Sega's fault. This is 1,000,000% Ian Flynn's fault. Here's why that is. First, you guys need to stop gaslighting yourselves and other people into believing Sega is entirely to blame. And you need to not let Ian Flynn gaslight you into not taking blame for something that is his fault through being vague about the actual argument being made. The argument that you all should be making is not that Ian writes Shadow wrong. Ian writes him exactly as Sega wants him to write him. So whenever you say that Ian Flynn fails at writing for Shadow, it makes it very easy for him to just respond that Sega wants him that way. Yes, Shadow's personality is Sega's fault. That is the mandate. The actual argument you need to make is that Ian himself does not know how to write scenarios for Shadow with the personality that Sega wants him to have. Ian has an entirely different interpretation of Shadow that Sega does not agree with, and because of that, Ian is constantly given notes to correct his mistakes. That's the actual truth. It's another argument to say that you want Shadow to return to his SA2 and 06 era. I would love that too, and Ian would also agree that is what he wants. Sega does not want that. Ian is simply not good at writing for the personality that Sega actually wants Shadow to have. So when Ian does write for Shadow, he makes him do and say very dumb things. That is his writing that is doing that. You need to make it clear when arguing with people that Ian's story decisions for Shadow are the problem, not Shadow's personality. Ian is not dumb. He knows the argument you're making, but he can publicly deflect it if you state that argument incorrectly. Shadow's personality does play a role in his dialogue, but rarely does it ever affect his actions for the narrative. What you can say is Sega's fault is Shadow's personality and his character. What you cannot say is Sega's fault is Shadow getting infected and choosing to stay there and fight. Ian has made it abundantly clear that Sega did not make Shadow get infected. This was entirely his idea, and he always planned it from the very beginning. Anybody that says that Shadow's fate in this comic is somehow Sega's fault is wrong, and they are making an already debunked argument. The only thing, I repeat, the only thing that Sega made Ian Flynn change about the scene in issue 19 was that Shadow could not use his inhibitor rings, as admitted by Ian Flynn himself. So allow me to explain what a mandate actually is. Mandates are something that are officially required, meaning something that you have to listen to, or you're out of a job. In terms of writing, this ensures that the entire franchise is unified spiritually, if not directly. Here's some direct examples of a mandate. We'll just use the Sonic series, but this kind of latches on to everything out there. Sonic is not red. Sonic does not want to be in a committed relationship. Vector is a crocodile. Eggman is a villain. These characters don't age. Metal Sonic is made of metal. Sonic and his friends live on planet Earth. Humans do not look like freaky tentacle monsters. They look like people. Shadow is standoffish and a loner. It's extremely rare for Sonic to feel like he needs to cry. Sonic's favorite food is a chili dog, not Red Robin's bottomless fries for only $3.99. See, the purpose of mandates is to ensure that when you, the audience, picks up a Sonic story, it's going to always look and feel like a Sonic story. That is what a mandate is. A mandate is not somebody telling a writer not to do something. That is a request or a demand from a company to ensure the franchise continues uniformly. At any point, a writer can be called back and be told that they can do something now, because the company has decided that it falls in line with the franchise's current direction. So there is no mandate that says when X character is on screen, you must kill them. There is no mandate that says Eggman cannot create unique robots in his army. There is no mandate that says there can never be a new Sonic character. There is no mandate that says you can't bring back or introduce characters and or concepts that originated from spin-offs. One of the most major reasons a company is saying no to something is because it would not fit for the current direction of a franchise. In the case of Shadow's inhibitor rings, something that Sega has not tried again since Sonic 06. At least for the year of 2019, when issue 19 and 20 were released, that was something that Sega was not trying to do ever again. So, in order to keep uniformity, Ian could not use the inhibitor rings. But later down the line, if they choose that now the inhibitor rings are a part of Shadow's character again, Ian can use them once more as long as it fits with the way that they're now using the inhibitor rings. That's how that works. Wait! I can't believe that I almost went without mentioning this. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you've been enjoying the video. Be sure to leave a comment involving your thoughts below. Leave a like and share this video to every single person you know, even if it's just your cat. Now back to the video. Alright, now, what's a KotyTang video without pointing out what his story does wrong? So let's get into the good stuff. The theme for the saga seems to be about how bad things can get if you act too carelessly. But IDW delivers no final message to this idea. Now, not every story needs some grandstanding happy ever after ending to an idea. The message a story delivers in the end can be pretty sad, but like, they don't even give you that. Now you would imagine that the lesson to be learned is that by being cautious and thinking things through, everything will work out in the end. This is echoed by Sonic choosing to take Tails' warning about Eggman's return, which makes him think about how his first action should go, rather than just running around until something works. This theme is also echoed in Dr. Starline constantly hounding Eggman about how careless he is and how he should be more cautious and calculating. The theme is evident in the words of these characters. The story consistently, from start to finish, just shows everything failing over and over again. Damn near the entire cast fails to make any sort of logical conclusion or carefully planned out action. So you would assume that, to keep in line with the theme, there are going to be characters that are more cautious than everybody else, and they're the ones that are going to keep winning. But that doesn't happen. In fact, everything is fixed by the cast continuing to be reckless, getting themselves infected, which makes them put all of their eggs in the basket of Sonic getting the final Chaos Emerald from Zavok, as they hope and pray for Super Sonic to be able to somehow get rid of the virus with the Warp Topaz. So, in actuality, I guess the theme's conclusion is that no matter how completely everything gets, somebody will take over the burden for you and your life will return to how it was before. Like I said, themes don't necessarily have to have some sort of happy or satisfying conclusion. However, when you present a theme and then give the audience nothing in return, what even was the point of the theme? Is there another theme that I'm missing here? If anything, this was a guideline for how the writers were supposed to manage the saga, not the theme. It's like all the writers got together and were just like, just keep writing more messed up situations and then, I don't know, we'll do something at the end. The fact that nobody in this story can do anything right at all is ridiculous, and it's just not believable at all. Now, not everybody can do everything perfectly, but even the most minute mess-ups happen in this saga, which would have been completely avoided in any other saga we were reading. Here's how IDW slyly uses specific characters to make certain scenarios happen. There's no way that Eggman has zero security on the Eggnet. There is no way that all of Sonic's friends can just guess his password and have access to every single one of his files with no further security. This is Eggman's own personal network. He could make the security be whatever he wants. This is a guy who's supposed to have 300 IQ, and all he could think of was input password. The guy makes hyper advanced AI for these robots. Just put in a password. Here's where IDW's highly selective character choice comes in. If Tails was the one following Sonic in issue 15 instead of Amy, Tails would have had to hack through 800 security checks before he could even type the first character of Eggman's password. Now, obviously 800 is an exaggeration. To use an example from this comic, in issue 7, Tails did not just tell Sonic to hop into one of the computer rooms and type Eggman's password in. He had to give him a device to download all of the data so that then Tails can go over and analyze it after. He couldn't just open up some files. Tails had to analyze what he was just given, while Amy just typed in a password, opened up the first file she saw, and there were all of Eggman's current plans. Sounds like Eggman's keeping up with the theme of this saga, right? But there's more! There's no way a Zombot got into HQ and nobody noticed. There's no reason that Tails had to be completely by himself in Central City. There's no way that Shadow would allow himself to be infected and then overrun. There's no way that Charmy wouldn't understand that once somebody was infected, they're gone for good. There's no way that Gemerald would ever be in the conversation for fighting the Deadly Six. And so many more instances I've called out where the characters just act like complete idiots. even if the response is done in character in terms of how they're speaking or the general concept of what they're wanting to do, paying attention to the actual thing somebody is responding to can take you out of a moment and realize that the character is making absolutely no sense, and it's something they wouldn't actually end up doing or failing to such a ludicrous degree at attempting. And since we're on the topic of failures, there are many writing blunders that you can witness as you read along for this saga. You can see even more that I pointed out as I read along. However, I'm just gonna throw out 7 really big ones that I think should really be called into question for the IDW team. Of course, at the top of the list is the inclusion of the Deadly Six. They were a terrible decision to add into the final section of the saga. There is nothing that IDW could do to defend this idea. It was simply a huge mistake. It's as if IDW realized halfway into publishing these issues that the Deadly Six would have been perfect for this saga, so they all collectively went, "Oh shit, we need to get them in now!" and just tossed them into the next issue. The Deadly Six should have been in it from the first moment of the saga. As they are, they only waste space and completely derail the story that we were following. It makes sense that the Deadly Six would be a part of the saga thanks to the army of Zombots, as it gives the Deadly Six the perfect story to work with. However, IDW didn't make this story about the Deadly Six. They very clearly made it about Dr. Eggman's return and Dr. Starline's eventual decision to leave Eggman and begin his own empire. That's the story we were following on the villain side. The Deadly Six serve as the catalyst to force Starline to leave Eggman's service, but had they just made Starline leave of his own free will to prove that he could show Eggman how running an empire should be, or fail at doing this because that's his thing, he fails at everything, by making Starline leave on his own accord, Starline's arc would have felt much more complete. It's not even just Starline's arc. Thanks to the Deadly Six, everybody's arc is stunted. Nobody's story could be explored properly, and every panel that the Deadly Six was in was yet another panel that could have gone to developing and finishing the storylines we had already been following. Shadow getting infected could have been a standout moment if it just wasn't written so poorly. It's such a simple argument. Shadow has never gotten himself killed by his own hubris. Sonic Forces, the very game that this comic is directly based on. That game debunks this entire idea. Shadow never found himself caught up in anything that would be detrimental to himself throughout that entire war. And in that game, he acted almost entirely solo in everything that he did. If anything, Shadow's arrogance is backed up by that. He knows exactly what he can and cannot do. The scene where Shadow gets turned into a Zombot in issue 19 is poorly written. Nothing backs up that Shadow would do that, and there's just no defense for it. Even if we went with Ian's original idea of the inhibitor rings, again, Shadow wouldn't do that. He would not go down like that. That just wouldn't happen. So no matter how we split it, with the rewrite and Ian's original idea, neither scenario would have matched Shadow's character. There's a moment where Sonic and Espio have this surface level argument about sparing Mr. Tinker. Personally, I'm on Espio, Whisper, and Shadow's side when it comes to Mr. Tinker. There's nothing that could ever happen to Eggman that would excuse him of all he's done. He's gotta go, and that was their chance. He's a repeat offender, sometimes even worse than what he did before. But most characters in Sonic, I guess, just don't have the same level of conviction like me. The best thing you could have done for Mr. Tinker is put him in captivity with the Resistance so that he could be carefully watched and kept safe, not hurting anybody. Or could have went the darker route and euthanized that man. IDW should have explored the idea of what to do with Mr. Tinker, as the ramifications and actual feelings displayed by each character simply do not fall in line with Sonic's philosophy. Sonic's philosophy in this comic is purely and uniquely his own. Most of his friends do not map onto the words that Sonic is saying. Shadow, Omega, Whisper, Espio, Knuckles, Silver, Blaze. We could even throw Gemerald into the mix. But these characters can't stop being friends in this comic or have any meaningful argument that might change how these characters see each other in the future. And that is one of the biggest losses of this comic. The conversation for how to deal with Mr. Tinker would have been a major divide for these characters to deal with, especially for somebody like Whisper, who feels that her entire life has been flipped upside down thanks to Eggman. Something that I found glaringly jarring while reading this saga was the random security task force for Sunset City. Who the hell are these guys? They're not Gun, they're not members of the Restoration. Where were they in the Revenge of Neo Metal saga? Where were they in Sonic Forces? Who are these people? If they were in the Restoration, why are they all uniformly dressed? Nobody in the Restoration dresses like this. They are so clearly ran by Rouge and Shadow, so who the hell are they? Why have these guys never shown up again in this saga? Are we ever going to be told why they were not present anywhere else before this? Are we going to see them again? You can't just make stuff up and then say nothing about it. If you want people to take your world seriously, then your world requires consistent rules and an understanding of the world from the audience. This military organization that just comes out of nowhere should never have happened the way it was written. I ask you all these very simple questions in relation to issue 21. What happened to the military guys from issue 19, and where are the other members of the Restoration? You are aware that Sonic and his friends are not the only people here, right? It's an entire organization. See, this is a case of IDW either accidentally or intentionally ignoring their own world building so that Tails could fail to copy his cure to the virus. There is no logical reasoning as to why there would only be 3 people attempting to save and protect an entire city. What you're telling me is that there's no police force or any sort of emergency response team here. Does Central City just freely exist without laws? This applies to other cities as well. Only the Chaotix helped out people in Seaside City, and Rouge, Shadow, and Omega were Sunset City's best defense, along with this ass-pull military organization that they brought with them out of nowhere. Even if we just give full responsibility to the Restoration side, it still makes no sense. This is a mission that was specifically designed by them. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment mission like with the Chaotix in Seaside City. This is one of the most important missions to the entire Metal Virus saga. Creating a cure. There is no conceivable way that the Restoration would only send Tails, Tangle, and Whisper, and that be all they send. Everything about issue 21 simply does not make any logical sense. Tangle and Whisper would be integral to directly assisting Tails for a mission like this. What you have to understand about writing is that the writer is the one who makes these scenarios fall into place to get the result they want. If IDW wrote it so that random members of the Restoration join the mission in Central City, Tangle and Whisper would have been able to help Tails, and they still could have had Tails lose the antidote in the end. So not only would we have spent time with Tangle and Whisper, we also would have advanced the plot. That's how writing works. Jewel and Amy are terrible leaders for the Restoration. I briefly talked about this on the final issues for this saga, and I think this deserves a small discussion on its own. So let's do that. Jewel should not be a character. At least not a character with the level of importance that they're about to give her. She has a pretty design, and it's great that she's Tangle's best friend, but she basically symbolizes a wasted opportunity. IDW has a growing problem with characters that have no purpose in the story. That doesn't only apply to their original characters, it also applies to the original Sonic cast. Jewel is written to be the next person to take over the restoration. That should make her more important, but why would you make Jewel the leader? Jewel is a curator of a museum. What would she know about running an entire worldwide restorative organization, much less a military organization? What IDW should have done is create a character that the restoration could look up to right after Knuckles quit. Somebody who was heavily involved during the war in Sonic Forces that has the confidence to take over the restoration. Somebody who can make plans and properly manage the organization. Hell, Jewel could have been written on later to be somebody who deals with the paperwork while the actual leader commands the organization. This would have made it so that Tails would have never been alone in Central City, Sonic would never have been forced to be the sole person who divides up teams against the Deadly Six, every town or city would be awarded with some level of protection and combat training thanks to the restoration, hundreds of thousands of people would be lining up at the gate of the restoration to create an army that counters Eggman and helps with the protection of the Earth. There are millions of things that different divisions of an organization could work toward. Doing research on whatever, creating weapons, training security, creating robots that counter Eggmans, yet we're given none of that. Instead, we're given Amy crying about how hard it is to be a leader, and Jewel crying about how she only knows how to be organized and not how to lead an army. What a waste of a competent character space that in universe, nobody would even agree with. Whenever you think about how a world is built, the most powerful thing you can do in a story is imagine that you are a character in this world. So imagine being in a world where the greatest defense against an evil genius with 300 IQ is an organization ran by one single person who doesn't know how to delegate, plan, use resources, expand, create new ideas, and is constantly running around like a decapitated chicken trying to figure out how to keep even their own emotions in check. Me personally, I would never agree to join this busted organization. I'm more likely to die following Amy and Jewel's poorly thought out decisions than I would be just trying to survive out on my own. Thanks to Amy's horrific planning and countermeasures, that's the reason that more than half of the restoration was completely deleted overnight. She had the worst scanning method for people I've ever seen. Scan these people for the virus as they're all standing in a group already inside of the base. Huh? At the least, that's what I want to assume had to have been happening, because the alternative is that nobody was scanned for the virus and they were all just forced to be shoulder to each other inside of this crammed ass base. Here's something you can really think about. After the base goes on complete lockdown, General literally scans the entire base through a door in a matter of seconds and confirms that everybody is at least slightly infected. Was there any scanning procedure at all? Somehow, Vector carrying a Zombot Charmy in a capsule was more cautious than Amy's decision to just let every single person inside of the base and then maybe testing them after they're already all bunched together. Well, Amy's the leader. What about her underlings that are supposed to be helping her? Well, everybody around her in that instance was just as much of an absolute moron for allowing this idea to go through, which is of course the theme of this saga. How far sheer stupidity can take you. And then there's the metal virus. Finally, I get to talk about this thing. The Zombot virus is essentially IDW's alternative to roboticization, a concept that comes from the 90s cartoon of Sonic the Hedgehog, where Dr. Robotnik would do, well, just that. Turn the various animal denizens of Mobius into robots, sacrificing their free will and giving their undying fealty to Robotnik. The metal virus works similarly in concept. However, unlike roboticization, the metal virus requires a single drop of the liquid on something that is either organic or non-processed to subject the victim to an ever-expanding disease. Now, Eggman never said that something had to be alive, so assumedly, even something dead could be reanimated through this virus. But one of the biggest writing blunders for this saga is that the metal virus actually makes no f***ing sense. I already did the joke where I poke fun at IDW for transforming the clothes that a character is wearing as well, but what I'm talking about here is the actual virus itself, as it's written, drawn, and explained. The virus is shown to be able to directly stick to anything, yet it will also switch to liquefying and sliding off anything that's not organic or has been processed. The virus doesn't affect grass, as seen by the hundreds of zombots walking directly on grass, including Sonic, yet it also can directly affect grass, as it transforms an entire town based on the fact that there's grass and trees everywhere. But even then, in that same issue, the zombots directly walking on the grass does nothing to it. And then it will just continue to flip-flop as it's convenient for the story. The zombots are presented as being very hard, yet at the same time, they're extremely squishy. As seen in every single fight the zombots are in, when they get hurt, it will randomly flip between the two as the story decides. Just like how it's presented as either a gel or a liquid whenever IDW feels it's more convenient. The virus is shown to have literally changed the molecular structure of a single person to the point that they can become a blob of goop and put themselves back together. Yet Super Silver is able to just apparently rip the virus from a person's very DNA strand and rearrange it without even harming the person, so much so to the point that they become 100% back to normal with nothing wrong with them. It's never explained why Sonic's speed puts the virus in remission, ever. Not a single time is it even explored why that could be happening. Sonic is just a walking Deus Ex Machina, and IDW runs with it. Because it's based on speed for Sonic, he should be able to fling this virus off by spin dashing and creating these tornadoes due to the amount of speed that would be required to perform both actions, which would be unfathomably even faster than just running. Yet, only running helps for some reason. Again, they never explained why. Hazmat suits, latex, coats, cloaks, gloves, shoes, and any sort of apparel be damned. Layers do not stop the virus. In fact, clothes work exactly the same as the virus touching you, as seen in so many panels where people are infected just because it's on their clothing. You know, the thing that would be processed and therefore immune to the virus. The thing that should make the virus apparently liquefy and just slide off, not somehow attached to the person still. I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. I know the cure to the virus. In fact, I'm the only person in the entire Sonic community, and even the IDW writing team, that knows what is needed to cure the metal virus. Well, the first one's very simple. Of course, as seen by the Deadly Six, just one single Chaos Emerald. However, there's one more secret. You see, whatever chemicals are being put inside of processed materials has to be used as part of the cure. Eggman literally says, processed material can't be infected. So, process wood, clothes, metal, chicken, whatever. You gotta understand this, okay? Processed material doesn't mean something stops being made of organic material, which is what the virus is allegedly using to latch onto and spread. So, whatever chemicals are being used in all of this processed material, well, that's what you gotta put in the antidote, and the virus becomes nullified. Boom! Now, the antidote may kill you, or it may just make you very sick, but the result will be no more metal virus. So if Tails can just create a concoction that safely incorporates all or some of these chemicals, then he's got himself a cure. Ian has talked about this status quo that he has to adhere to. However, this status quo doesn't seem to map onto everybody, especially not Sonic the Hedgehog himself. What it seems like is the status quo he's referring to is only in relation to who is friends with who and who is still relevant in the games at the time of the issue's release. That seems to be the only status quo he has to adhere to. Oh, and Shadow as well. The only character who Sega demands to be written in a highly specific way, even though only 1% of the fandom even agrees with how Sega writes him, and the rest of us know that he's just become an absolute dog shit character. Just some rapid fire things that are very off for these characters. Vanilla and Omega, straight up, have never acted like how they're portrayed in this comic. Sonic is not a person who pushes the concept of good and evil, nor does he care to redeem people who he doesn't see as a friend or a potential friend. Amy is not a leader, nor does she know how to lead. And Silver is not a wholesome, silly boy. Many of the characters are fine though, such as Tails, Cream, Knuckles, and Blaze. I just don't understand what this status quo that Ian is referring to could be if many of IDW's characters are literally not in line with who they're supposed to be according to the games. Tangle and Whisper still have absolutely zero plot relevance. I've covered the entirety of their miniseries, and they do get a bit of development in there as characters. However, the miniseries is so far removed from the Metal Virus saga, you can almost place it anywhere. And the miniseries shouldn't play a major part in the narrative for the saga anyway. So even if they did get a ton of development in them, I would still criticize IDW negatively for not putting it in the main story. Their development should stand on its own in the main story. As far as characters go, these two are just pointless. Issue 21 focused way too much on Tails and completely ignored the chance to develop Tangle and Whisper. What it looks like to me is that the only point of putting those two in issue 21 was to have somebody kind of protect and save Central City in the background. Since they are also nowhere near Tails, it comes off as IDW throwing them into the issue because they realized they hadn't really used either character up to this point. In the issue before this, Tails specifically makes the Central City plan with Sonic and Silver, and then Tangle and Whisper randomly appear in the next issue. For issue 21, neither of the girls have valid narrative weight, and they serve better as unseen security guards. IDW should have had them assisting Tails the entire time. Now, there is something significant that happened to Whisper where she loses Tangle. However, we can't talk about that unless we also talk about Cream makes her debut in the Metal Virus saga and was immediately put through massive trauma, which is kind of funny. Not what's happening to her, but the ludicrousness of what Cream, one of the most innocent characters of the entire franchise, is forced to go through. Cream is the actual tortured soul of the saga, not Whisper, and IDW missed a huge opportunity to have a real emotional breakdown for a character that the audience could get behind. Instead, they gave it to Whisper as an attempt to give her a big scene for this arc. Don't give me any of that IDW wasn't allowed to give Cream this moment when they have forcefully dragged her character across a gravel road, obliterated her spirit to the point that she couldn't even display her emotions anymore, and Cream had to watch as her mother essentially dies to the Metal Virus. IDW took some insane liberties with how Cream was handled in this saga, so there is no way that anybody could properly argue that Sega would not let Cream have that moment. The amount of development that Cream would realistically go through here is astronomical. Cream should have been the one screaming for her mother, not Whisper screeching for Tangle. And then they just have Cream consoling Whisper as if she's the only one that could understand. Cream lame as a baby, bro. This grown-ass woman just crying into the lap of a child like this. And the child is the one keeping it all together here. Rough and Tumble actually have a purpose this time. Congratulations, IDW! As I said in my Neo Metal Saga review, these two should have already been on Starline's side. That would have automatically put them at odds with Sonic. Remove issue 3, add their introduction with Starline, make them fight Sonic in issue 13, and they once again gain a grudge against Sonic. It's the same exact story either way. How IDW tackled these two in this saga was good. Show us what they can do, which happened in the fight with Sonic and Tails. Once we establish a vendetta against our heroes, give them another crack with an upgrade. Use these expendable characters to introduce a threat. Then finally, subvert the viewer's expectations by revealing your hand in a very memorable and shocking way. Rough and Tumble being fodder villains is the best thing that could have happened to them in this saga. So good job to IDW for how they handled these characters. I'm curious how they'll feel about Eggman betraying them though. Jewel is still a nobody, but now her character should matter. Dr. Starline's first meeting with the heroes is a big deal, immediately displaying his cunning nature, his ability with the Warp Topaz, and his daring to actually kill any of these heroes. However, IDW stunted him, and boy did they stunt him bad, reducing him to Eggman's lackey by making Eggman straight up little bitch his ass, grabbing him after expertly battling with Eggman's greatest nemesis better than Eggman ever has. Starline is written as though he's clearly supposed to be Eggman, but better in many ways. I like the idea of an Eggman protege, and I want to follow the IDW team as they explore that, but they literally lie about Eggman's character in order to bring Starline up. And every single time Starline has done something, he's failed or messed up badly. His greatest success was literally the first time he fought Sonic and damn near won. Starline has failed numerous times and failed to even understand the most obvious concepts. He is such a brainless and incompetent character. The guy who has been researching Eggman for years had no idea why Sonic was capable of being Eggman's arch rival. Did he miss that part of the history lesson or something? He didn't understand how the virus would spread. He failed to get Eggman's memories back. Eggman doesn't even trust him to 1v1 Sonic anymore, and both him and Eggman struggled to get the metal virus working on a wide broadcast so that they can control the Zombots. Oh, and I can't forget about the fact that he's the reason the Deadly Six show up at all, through not even researching or bothering to understand this enslaved race by Eggman. Of course they're going to betray you. They don't like Eggman. They undermine Eggman as a character in order to bring up Starline as a character. It's a double middle finger to anybody reading this comic once Eggman slams Starline to the wall, making the bullshit claim that Eggman wouldn't just kill Sonic if he had the chance. He would apparently only kill Sonic in some extravagant, highly particular, Rube Goldberg-like puzzle to make sure Sonic dies in a proper way to him, which ignores how Eggman has tried to kill Sonic multiple times throughout the entire franchise, and even in this comic by sending Metal Sonic and Rough and Tumble after him to, well, kill him through the act of mercilessly beating him, which is somehow better than Sonic's body being blown up and his pieces being flung around the room. Eggman's warning to Starline about how to end Sonic answers a question that doesn't need to be asked, and devalues both Sonic and Eggman as characters. So IDW attempts to define the fact that Eggman won't kill Sonic without it being some flashy, incredible work of a pure 300 IQ genius. Okay, so what's stopping him from just killing any of Sonic's other friends? At the end of the saga, Eggman just throws some cheaply made robot together and attempts to kill them all before Sonic arrives. During the fight with Sonic's friends, he also pulls out this mountain obliterating gun. Why doesn't he just shoot Sonic's friends like that? Does every single one of Sonic's friends have to go out in a blaze of glory too? Weird, because the whole point of that was that he kills them all before Sonic arrives, right? And he shot at Tails and Rouge, so he didn't seem to have a problem with it. Eggman was shown to be stressingly incompetent, going as far as just having a basic Facebook login screen for all of his bases, rather than any sort of high security that is unique to him that nobody could crack without a decryptor of some sort. Eggman just lets the metal virus do whatever it wants. It takes over the whole world? Well, he'll just leave. He gets infected? Oops, he didn't bother to make a cure, at the least for himself. Sonic was almost completely taken out of the entire battle? Nope, can't have that. Somebody has to be able to stop him. Oh wait, Sonic is gone from the Warp Topaz? This is my chance to kill everybody. Oh, Sonic came back? Well, time to go plan some more, I guess. See you next time? What is this bullshit, bastardized version of Eggman that IDW is trying to throw at us? The rest of the OG cast all remains the same, except for Amy, who became the leader of the Restoration at the end of the Neo Metal Saga, and has now realized she wants to be an adventurer like Sonic again, so that's what she's gonna do. Could not have found Mr. Tinker. It simply would not have been possible. According to Dr. Starline, finding Eggman would have been simply impossible. Metal Sonic's entire army could not even find a trace of his existence. It was only thanks to the fact that the Warp Topaz can open portals and peer into all over the world that Starline found Eggman at all. Which would mean that Rouge is the most competent character in the entire universe because she's better at finding people than a mystic object that can search areas in a matter of seconds and an entire empire of robots that never need to rest. It's simply not possible. In order for this to be consistent and no longer a plot hole, Rouge can never struggle to find anyone or anything ever again in the future. Silver's future is not at all how he describes in the annual comic, and that description also doesn't match how it's shown in issue 8. Silver says that he doesn't even have fertile ground, yet when we see it fully in issue 31, it's a thriving metropolis with gorgeous plains. The Eggnet is connected to every single base, and when Eggman creates an update or has new information for his badniks, it goes to every single base at once. We can see this in issue 15, when Sonic and Amy turn on an entirely abandoned, completely inactive base. So inactive that it doesn't have defenses. Eggman is notified of it turning on, meaning that Metal Sonic could not have hid a shred of information about himself in the entirety of the Neo Metal Saga. Meaning, once again, an entire chunk of the Neo Metal Saga simply could not have happened, if not the whole saga itself. In issue 12, Metal Sonic could not have found Eggman when he was with Dr. Starline. That was the entire point of the Neo Metal Saga. There is absolutely no way that Metal Sonic found his way back to Eggman. Nobody called him over, and Dr. Starline never interacted with him, so there would be no way that Metal Sonic would know that they had Mr. Tinker, and he would not know where he even was. What do you guys think about the Metal Virus Saga? For me, this was the saga that I was the most excited to finally experience. And it failed to deliver on nearly every front for me. I'm very surprised that this was the saga that was so heavily praised in the early days of IDW's run. It's the entire reason that I even really found out about this comic to begin with, since I never really followed the Sonic comics. This comic is also the entire reason that my channel went into the direction of becoming a Sonic tuber. Ironically, since I dislike many of the Sonic tubers, I actually wanted to take a moment to thank you all for allowing me to gain over 600 subscribers. We're nearly at 1,000, which is a huge milestone. For me, at least. Even just reaching 100 subscribers was something I never thought would happen. I see a ton of regulars in my comments, and I appreciate and remember every single one of you. I hope we can keep growing as a community. So thank you all for joining me on this journey so far, but we're not done yet. We're covering this comic front to back. So I hope to see you guys next time when I go over the annual 2020 comic. And for anybody just finding out about this channel, I hope that you'll decide to take that journey with me from the very beginning of this series. Again, a huge thank you for every one of you watching, especially those who have taken the time to experience this long-ass video all the way through to the end. Thank you to those who have given and will be giving extra long comments. Thank you to those who even give little quick comments as well. I try to respond to each and every one of you if and when I can. Another huge thank you to all of those who have debated with me and each other, those who have subscribed, liked, shared my videos, and even those who have disliked my videos. My goal has always been to create and participate in discussions in whatever community I dip into. So it always makes me happy to see you guys talking about the things I'm saying in these videos. And with that said, I hope to see you guys in the next one. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Okay, bye!